The sun burned mercilessly over the lonely stretch of land, turning the wide valley into a sea of shimmering dust and silence. William stood beside the splintered fence of his ranch, sleeves rolled, jaw tight, eyes narrowed against the wind that never seemed to rest. The place was worn, much like him, weather-beaten wood, tired soil, and a quiet heaviness that clung to everything. He preferred it that way. No noise, no people, no complications. Then he saw her. A small figure on the horizon, walking instead of riding, each step slow but unwavering. That alone was enough to draw his suspicion. No one walked this far unless they had nowhere else to go, or nothing left to lose. As she came closer, the details sharpened, dust on her boots, a plain dress clinging to her frame, and a face that carried exhaustion without surrender. Her eyes met his before she even reached the gate, steady and unafraid. "I'm looking for work," she said, her voice even, neither soft nor pleading. William didn't move. He had seen desperate people before, men broken by hunger, drifters chasing luck, but she didn't look like any of them. There was no desperation in her posture, only a quiet insistence. "You won't find it here," he replied flatly. "I can fix fences, tend horses, cook, clean. I don't need charity." Her words came like facts, not requests. That unsettled him more than begging would have. "I ain't gonna hire a stubborn woman like you," he said, sharper this time, already turning away as if that ended it. But it didn't. She stayed. William felt it before he saw it again, the weight of someone refusing to leave. He glanced back, irritation flickering in his chest. She hadn't moved an inch. "I said no," he snapped. "And I said I can work." The wind pushed between them, carrying dust and tension alike. Her voice hadn't risen, hadn't cracked. It simply stood there, as firm as she was. Something about that stirred an old, unwanted memory in William, the kind of strength that didn't shout, didn't beg, but endured. He buried it quickly, jaw tightening. "You don't belong here," he muttered. "I don't belong anywhere," she replied, and for the first time, something shifted, not weakness, not pity, just truth laid bare without decoration. Silence stretched long enough to grow uncomfortable. William exhaled sharply, dragging a hand across his face as if wiping away the moment. "One day," he said finally, voice rough with reluctant concession. "That's it. You mess up, you're gone." She nodded once, as if that was all she ever expected. Rose didn't wait for further instruction. She stepped past the gate and went straight to work, scanning the land with quick, assessing eyes. William watched her from where he stood, arms crossed, certain he'd made a mistake. He had seen stubbornness before, it usually broke by noon. But she didn't break. She moved with purpose, lifting tools as though they belonged in her hands, not borrowed. When she reached the broken section of fence, she knelt without hesitation, driving posts into the stubborn earth with steady force. Her rhythm was unpolished but effective, each motion calculated, each effort spent carefully. William told himself he wasn't watching, yet his gaze kept drifting back. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, punishing anyone foolish enough to work beneath it, yet she didn't slow. Sweat dampened her sleeves, dust clung to her skin, but she carried water, repaired wood, and calmed a restless horse with a quiet murmur that surprised him. She knew what she was doing. That realization irritated him more than it should have. At one point, a heavy bucket slipped slightly from her grip. William instinctively took a step forward, then stopped. She adjusted her hold, steadied herself, and lifted it again without looking around for help. Pride. Not the loud, foolish kind. The kind that refused to ask, even when it hurt. He recognized it because he carried the same thing. By late afternoon, the ranch looked different, not transformed, but less neglected, less defeated. Rose wiped her hands on her dress, glancing over her work with a brief, quiet assessment. There was no smile, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement. Then she turned toward the gate. William frowned. "Where do you think you're going?" "Day's done," she said simply. She didn't ask for payment. Didn't ask to stay. She just prepared to leave, as though walking away from hard work and uncertainty was nothing unusual. That unsettled him more than anything else she had done. "You worked fine," he said, the word stiff, unfamiliar on his tongue. She paused, looking back at him, her expression unchanged. I told you I could. No gratitude. No softness. Just certainty. She stepped out of the gate and began walking again, back toward the empty horizon she had come from. William stood there longer than he intended, watching her figure grow smaller against the fading light. Something restless stirred beneath his ribs, something he hadn't felt in years, curiosity sharp and unwelcome. Why hadn't she asked to stay? Why hadn't she tried to convince him further? Most people clung to chances. She walked away from them. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land, and still, he watched until she nearly disappeared into the dusk. The wind carried a chill now, brushing against him like a quiet reminder that the world was wider than the walls he had built around himself. That night, as darkness settled over the ranch, William sat alone outside his cabin, staring into the distance where she had vanished. The silence felt different, heavier, as though something had shifted without permission. He told himself she was nothing more than a passing stranger. But the truth lingered, stubborn and undeniable. For the first time in years, someone had walked into his world, challenged it without fear, and left without looking back. And somehow, that unsettled him more than if she had stayed. The next morning, William woke restless. The horizon was empty, Rose was gone. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling, couldn't stop thinking about her. By afternoon, he rode out, scanning the valley. Then he saw her, collapsed near the dry brush, pale and exhausted. "Rose!" he called, rushing to her side. She didn't respond at first, stubborn even in weakness. He lifted her onto his horse, careful but firm, and rode back to the ranch. Inside, he laid her on the bed, brought her water. Hours passed before she stirred, eyes blinking open. "You," she whispered. "You passed out," William said. Not very convincing for someone who doesn't need charity. A faint shadow of a smile touched her lips. "I wasn't going to come back," she admitted. "No," he said quietly. "But you are here now." She studied him, silent. "One day turned into two," he muttered. "Don't make it a habit of collapsing on my land." "I won't," she said softly. And for the first time in years, William's world didn't feel so empty. And for the first time, Rose didn't have to keep walking.